Now what you're already seeing in the example I showed in the last lecture is that of course this if-else statement in the end allows us to write more reusable code. Now calculate result is a function that works both for addition and subtraction. But you also see that two cases aren't enough here. I'm not happy with just two cases. We could also be multiplying or dividing. Well, the good thing is, besides if and else, you also have else if. You can use else if to add yet another condition you want to check, and you can have more than one else if statement here. An alternative would be a nested if statement where you now have an if statement in the else statement, so that if this condition is not met, you can check another condition, but you quickly end up with deeply nested if statements in if statements in if statements if you add more and more if statements in if statements, and that can make your code harder to read. So you would typically use such an else if statement here, where you can check for another condition here. So here I could check if calculation type is equal to subtract and then execute this code. And therefore right now with this code, if calculation type is add, we run this code. If it's subtract, we run this code. If it's any other value, that's also okay, but then neither this code nor that code here runs. So in that case, none of that code executes. And this means that right now this function wouldn't really work because that down here would be kind of broken. But technically you can also have if statements in your code where you don't necessarily meet any condition. That might be okay. It really depends on which kind of code and program you're writing. Throughout this course, you will also see examples of if statements where we also have the scenario that no condition is met. If you specify an else case, however, by the way, you are guaranteed that this code will always run if no condition was met in advance. So you don't need to have an else block here. Then it might very well be the case that no condition is met and no code runs. If you have an else block, on the other hand, then the else code will always run if no condition is met in this if statement. This is how if statements work. Now, however, here, I'm not just interested in adding and subtracting. Instead, I'll add another else if statement and check if the calculation type is equal to, let's say, multiply. If it is, well, then I want to take this multiplication code from down there, so set current result equal to current result times entered number, and set the math operator equal to this asterisk here. And now we can add a normal else block and just perform the division here because this is our last case. Of course, we could also use another else if block. That really depends on how you want to do that. If you just add an else block here, this means that this code runs no matter what is passed in as calculation type. So even if it's not divide but hi, I'm Max as a text, we would still execute this. This might or might not be what you want. If you want to make sure it really is divide here, then you would have to add calculation type equal to divide. So now you would just run this code if calculation type is divide. If the calculation type is neither add nor subtract or multiply or divide, none of the code would run. So that's really up to you. Here I'll go with the explicit check, but you could also just use an else statement here since we check all other options in advance. Well, and now we just have to make sure that we call calculate result. So call it here when we multiply and pass in multiply as a value, of course. And here for the division, pass in divide. And now we have way more concise and shorter code with our code reusage. We have all the logic in one function, which is good because it means we don't have to check dozens of functions to understand our code. Instead, it's all in here. And we have very lean code in here. Now let's just quickly validate this by running some calculations here. And we seem to have a problem with the multiplication. Yeah, because I have a typo here. This should be multiply. So let's fix that and reload. So now multiply this. Yeah, this now looks way better. And with that, This is the basic introduction to if statements and how you write them and how you use Boolean operators. Now, of course, here I always use the equality operator because equality is the thing I'm interested in here. This is not really a use case where I would use the greater than operator or anything like that, but we'll also see use cases for that throughout the course. And of course, you can also play around with your own basic if conditions and try them out with some numbers and some greater than comparisons if you want to. Again, this also is something though we'll have a detailed look throughout this module and throughout the entire course again.